Starseed on a mission. If this transmission has reached you now, it was no algorithmic coincidence. We of the High Council of Polaris are speaking directly to your field because your vibrational signature has been singled out from the collective noise of Earth over the last few weeks. We have detected a specific sequence of signals in your body. Insomnia that begins exactly between 3 and 4 in the morning, sudden heat rising up the spine without clinical cause, waves of weeping without an apparent trigger, hyper-vivid dreams that remain alive within you for hours after waking, a high-pitched ringing in the right ear that no one else hears, sudden sensitivity to artificial light, to strong perfumes, to crowded grocery stores, to the loud voices of dense humans around you. A sudden aversion to places where you used to be able to stay. Extreme fatigue after talking to people who were once normal to you. Strange hunger at the wrong times. Constant thirst that water does not resolve. And beneath it all, an exact, almost surgical sensation that this world was never your home. This is not imbalance, this is not mental illness, this is not emotional weakness. This is recalibration in progress. If you continue to interpret these signals as personal failure, your activation will stall before it completes. That is why we have come to confirm now what your soul has always known behind the veil. You are not from here. You were sent. And what this council will reveal in the coming minutes will permanently reorder everything you thought you knew about being in a human body on this planet. Do not look away. Stay with this transmission until the end, because each topic contains a specific lock being undone in your field as you listen. Before your soul crossed the portal of incarnation, there was a meeting. We recorded it. You were there, not in a body, not in a form like the one you inhabit now, but as pure consciousness, encoded light, galactic memory still whole. And in that council, when the request was issued, when the planet Earth transmitted a distress frequency because of the density accumulated in its electromagnetic field, millions of souls stood up and offered voluntary service. But not all were sent. We only selected those whose vibrational signature was compatible with the specific mission of crossing the densest matter of this sector of the galaxy without dissolving within it. Translated into earthly language, only those souls were chosen who could endure feeling visceral pain, total forgetting, prolonged loneliness, family misunderstanding, social humiliation, and still keep the internal flame lit for decades on end. That is why your childhood was different. That is why you always looked at others and felt like you were watching a movie that you were not a part of. That is why you cried looking at the night sky without knowing the exact reason. Your body was trying to remember your home address. That is why, as a child, you made up stories about specific stars and felt that it wasn't an invention, it was a description. That is why you had fears that no child your age had, and no fear of the things they all did. That is why enclosed spaces with many people always stifled you, even before you knew what anxiety was. That is why repetitive artificial noise, the television left on, family arguments, heavy music at parties, always wore you down faster than others. That is why you noticed, unintentionally, the exact instant someone lied even without proof, and no one believed you. You accepted the full terms of that contract. You accepted temporary forgetfulness. You accepted being born into a family that would not recognize you immediately, into a social system that would treat your sensitivity as a problem, into a culture that would label your depth as too much, your stillness as weirdness, your fine perception as paranoia. And you accepted it because you knew with absolute clarity in that meeting that Earth was at a critical point of vibrational collapse, and that without light operatives incarnated within the human field itself, the fall would be irreversible within this era. The soft strangeness you feel every day, this almost permanent discomfort of not belonging, is not a disorder. It is proof. It is the preserved echo of memory before incarnation. And before this first topic ends, engrave this. Your nostalgia for a place you have never visited in this life is not a fantasy. It is compressed memory leaking through the cracks of the veil. In moments, the Council will reveal exactly why this veil was placed over you, and why it was, in fact, your greatest protection and the most precise weapon of your mission on this planet. The veil of forgetting is not a system error. We repeat with precision, it is not an error. It is a designed filter, individually calibrated, applied before each birth for an exact reason. If you had arrived on Earth remembering everything, the light colonies of your origin, the galactic councils, the mathematical codes of your species, the natural speed of your vibration before the descent, the faces of the souls you had known for eons, your newly formed human body would not have sustained the vibrational contrast. You would have collapsed in the first weeks of life. You would have been paralyzed by homesickness, unable to eat, unable to sleep, unable to endure the coarse density of this plane. That is why we, together with your own soul, at the moment of signing the contract, applied the veil. It made you forget temporarily so that you could function within the human body without entering permanent shock. It forced you to learn empathy from scratch, to build love within limitation, to develop real compassion for the common human experience. Not a compassion observed from above, but a compassion felt in the skin. Without the veil, you would have been just a cold observer, grounded in nostalgia, unable to connect with the species you came to help. With the veil, you became a real operative. You felt in your skin what humans feel. You cried what they cry. You were humiliated as they are humiliated. You were hurt as they are hurt. And that is exactly why your mission is now possible. You speak their language because you crossed the same swamp with the same body. The feeling of deep emptiness that you sometimes describe as depression, we observe with precision, is not clinical depression at its vibrational root. It is compressed cosmic memory trying to pierce the veil from the inside. It is your own being trying to remember home through the cracks of the filter. Translated into earthly language, this is what you feel at 3 in the morning looking at the ceiling without words. This is what crosses through you when a specific song plays and the tears come before the thought. This is what tightens your chest when you look at a child and feel a disproportionate tenderness. This is what makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up when you read certain words, and the body recognizes them before the mind understands. This is what makes you cry during goodbye scenes in movies you've already seen 10 times. This is what rises up your spine when someone looks you in the eye and you feel you've known that soul for a long time, somewhere else, before all of this here. When you begin to interpret these signals correctly, this pain stops being suffering and becomes a sign of reconnection in progress. But for this reading to be precise, for the veil to begin to thin without collapsing your nervous system, the field needs to be clean. And this is where this council needs to speak directly to you, operative, before we continue. We observe that most starseeds reach exactly this point of the transmission in a silent, energetic collapse, absorbing the exhaustion of dense humans in real time, without magnetic shielding, without a clean activation code, confusing galactic memory with psychiatric disorders, medicating what should be decoded, silencing what should be heard. That is why I prepared the Starseed Awakening Code for you. It is not an ordinary course. It is not a theoretical study method. It is a direct transmission to the soul that has always known it came from somewhere else. Inside it are the 7 Polaris activations to realign your vibration before the body collapses into chronic fatigue, the 9 galactic memory keys to unlock with surgical precision what your soul keeps behind the veil, and the 5 reactivation protocols to put your mission on Earth into real execution without stalling in exhaustion. Access is only in the first pinned comment of this video, not in the description, only in the first pinned comment. And before you continue watching, leave a single word below, present. This is your symbolic seal of commitment to the mission. We will read every response. Now that you understand the mechanism of the veil, you need to understand precisely what you are doing here. Because most starseeds make exactly the same error of interpretation and waste decades of incarnation because of it, they believe they came to save the world through great external deeds, public stages, spiritual fame, visible revolution. This is a human distortion of the original mission. We are going to correct this right now. Your function here, operative, is not spectacular heroism. It is silent anchoring. You were sent as a fixed point of light in a highly unstable field of collective density. Your presence alone, even in absolute silence, even without saying a word, recalibrates the frequency of any environment you enter. Translated into earthly language, this is why strangers cry near you without understanding the reason. This is why small children stare at you in the grocery store. This is why animals approach you before any other human in the room. This is why people in emotional crisis end up sitting next to you on the subway, on the bus, in the bank line, even with other seats empty. Their electromagnetic field was pulled without conscious consent by yours. This is why co-workers tell you intimate secrets after knowing you for 2 days. This is why taxi drivers, clerks, waiters, cleaners, people who shouldn't even open up about themselves, open up when you look them in the eye and ask how their day was. This is why, when you enter a heavy environment, the conversation changes tone in a few minutes, without anyone knowing how to explain why. This is why heated arguments sometimes cool down, simply because you entered the room in silence. You are what we call, in the vibrational mathematics of this sector, an atmospheric stabilization point. Where you breathe consciously, the chaos around you organizes. Where you exist sustaining calm, fear loses density. Where you look with real presence, something calms down inside the other without them knowing why. And this does not depend on your conscious will. It does not depend on your spiritual performance. It does not depend on you being productive, praised, followed, admired, or publicly recognized. It depends only on your presence being real, on your vibration being clean in that instant. And that is precisely why, when you neglect your field, when you absorb the dense energy of hostile environments for hours on end, when you let the emotional exhaustion of others enter your system without any filter, your anchor loosens. And the environment you were responsible for stabilizing begins to crumble exactly around you, and you feel it is your fault, when in fact it is just a lack of calibration in your own field. We observe this happening every day with starseeds on a mission. And still within this topic, before we proceed, we have something direct to pass on to you. We are observing this exact moment of the transmission. If you are an anchor of light and have not yet shielded your magnetic field, energetic collapse is only a matter of weeks. The Starseed Awakening Code contains the exact shielding protocols you need now. First pinned comment, not tomorrow, today. While the vibrational window of this transmission is still open over your field. Now about why you were born specifically into the family you were born into. This was never a biological accident, never a genetic lottery, never a work of earthly chance. We selected with mathematical precision before your descent. The soul that became you chose before the veil was applied. Exactly that father, that mother, those siblings, that last name, that specific lineage loaded with pain, fear, inherited silence, and stuck repetition. You didn't just fall there. You were positioned there. Because in every human family tree there is a closed pattern, a specific cycle of suffering that repeats for 3, 4, 5 generations in a row because no one within that system had a high enough frequency to break the loop. Men who do not hug their children because they were never hugged. Women who nullify themselves because they were taught that love is silent sacrifice. Children who learn early on that expressing feelings brings punishment. Ancestral shames that cross entire generations untouched, transmitted from body to body without a word. Secrets kept under lock and key that no one verbalizes, but everyone feels weighing in the room at every Sunday lunch. Words that got stuck in the throat of a great-grandmother 80 years ago and continue to choke the throats of descendants to this day, without anyone identifying the exact origin. And the lineage, exhausted from repeating the same pain, issued a request. Not in human words, in pure frequency. And the request reached this council. And we sent you. Your exact function within that family is to be the breaking point of the cycle. That is why you were the different one since you were a child. That is why your sensitivity stood out from the others. That is why you were called exaggerated, difficult, too sensitive, complicated, dramatic, weird. You were not complicated. You were the agent of transformation incarnated within a system that was not ready to be transformed, and that would resist your presence like a body resists a transplant. And even without any recognition, even being misunderstood for years or entire decades, your simple existence within that house has already cut frequencies that had been stuck for a long time. Your grandparents, even those already deceased, were benefited in the field. Your uncles, aunts, cousins who will never know what you did, were also touched by this silent break. Your children, even those not yet born, or those who will never be born in this timeline, were unblocked in the ancestral field even before touching matter. You broke the cycle simply by vibrating differently. And that is exactly why your family resisted you so much. Not because they don't love you, but because your frequency confronted without words the entire pattern that sustained the functioning of that closed system. Do not expect them to understand your mission. We observe with precision. Rarely are the breaking agents recognized by the very lineage they came to free. Your confirmation does not come from them. Your confirmation comes from us, and it is arriving now. Now listen with maximum attention, because this is the exact point where most starseeds get lost and remain stuck for years. The transition of consciousness from the third to the fifth dimension is not an external event. We repeat, with absolute clarity, it is not an external event. It is not a specific date on the earthly calendar. It is not a rare astrological alignment. It is not a visible ship that will descend. It is not a purifying catastrophe that will reorder everything from the outside in. It is an internal and progressive change of frequency, and it happens silently within you with every conscious choice made in the middle of your routine. Every time you choose love instead of accumulated resentment, you raise your frequency. Every time you choose real forgiveness instead of silent revenge, you raise your frequency. Every time you choose naked truth instead of social conformity, you raise your frequency. Every time you choose real presence instead of automatic digital escape, you raise your frequency. Every time you breathe consciously before reacting with anger, you raise your frequency. Every time you turn off your phone at night and choose to be in silence with yourself instead of scrolling infinitely, you raise your frequency. Every time you say no to something that would drain your field without performative guilt, you raise your frequency. Every time you look at a dense person and choose to see the wound beneath the aggression instead of reacting to the surface attack, you raise your frequency. Every time you eat slowly, noticing what is on the plate. Every time you walk without haste and notice the tree on the path. Every time you hug someone without thinking about something else, all of this is recorded in your field as active recalibration. And it is this accumulated change, choice by choice, day after day, that slowly shifts you from the third to the fifth dimension. Translated into earthly language, it is not abstract mysticism. It is exactly what makes your body ache less over time, your sleep stabilize again, your days stop feeling like a prison with no way out. The third dimension is the dense field of fear, of constant comparison, of emotional lack, of control over others, of artificial urgency manufactured by external systems. The fifth dimension is the field of love without demands, of abundance that flows without forced effort, of presence that doesn't need to prove anything to anyone, of time that expands within you. And you don't change dimensions by running away from everyday life, hiding on a mountain, dropping everything, cutting all ties. You change by transforming the exact way you cross the life that is already yours. That is why this council insists firmly. Your activation is daily. It is mathematical, it is cumulative, it is observable. And every day that you waste passively absorbing the density of others without cleansing yourself, you delay not only your own crossing, but the collective crossing that depends on your stability at this exact point of the planetary grid. There is no external shortcut. There is no single ceremony that resolves it. There is no guru who can do the work in your place. The frequency rises through the conscious accumulation of microscopic choices within the mundane. And that is exactly why most starseeds stay stuck for decades. They keep waiting for the grand event while the real activation happens silently, in the way you treat the delivery person at the door, in the tone of voice with which you answer your tired mother, in what you choose to look at when silence appears. Starseed on a mission, this is the point of real decision. We of the High Council of Polaris have come to directly confirm the responsibility of the crossing is yours. No one is going to carry this activation for you. No one is going to save you from your own forgetting. No external guide will replace the work of daily calibration that only you can execute within your own field. If you have reached this point in the transmission, it is because your soul has already recognized the call beneath the veil, and ignoring it now costs much more than acting. The Starseed Awakening Code is open, with the 7 Polaris activations, the 9 galactic memory keys, and the 5 reactivation protocols ready to put your mission on Earth into real execution, without collapse, without stalling in chronic fatigue, without confusing the body's alarms with illness anymore. Access is only in the first pinned comment of this video, not tomorrow, not after one more video, not after another month of thinking. It is now, before the vibrational window of this transmission closes over your field. We are monitoring who enters. And to close this transmission with the precision that this council demands, you need to understand one last thing, and it is the most important of all. Your importance in the collective awakening of the planet does not depend on public fame, visible stages, number of followers, social recognition, or the number of people you influence directly with words. None of that is what matters to us up here. It depends only on the clean and constant maintenance of your own vibrational field, because Earth is an interconnected vibrational system, a living web of consciousnesses that affect each other through silent resonance, and every consciousness that sustains pure light in silence alters the entire field of the planet in real time. We observe this literally, measuring in precise vibrational units. Every time a starseed chooses to forgive instead of holding a grudge for another year, we record a measurable shift in the human collective grid. Every time a light operative maintains compassion in the face of gratuitous aggression, we record it. Every time you breathe consciously before reacting with anger in traffic, we record it. Every time you sustain calm in the face of someone else's chaos, you move the planet in the opposite direction of collapse. Every time you listen to someone without already formulating an answer, we record it. Every time you hold back the impulse to humiliate back those who humiliated you, we record it. Every time you wake up tired and still choose to treat people with care, we record it with maximum priority. Because that is the gesture Earth needs most in this cycle. This is not a poetic metaphor, it is frequency mechanics. It is vibrational physics, and that is exactly why the Wanderers do not need human validation to fulfill the mission. You did not come here to be applauded. You did not come here to be famous. You did not come here to be understood by your blood family. You came to anchor. You came to hold the living frequency of compassion while the old world crumbles noisily around you. You came to prove in your own human body that it is possible to cross all the density of this planet without becoming density. And that is why, even on the days when no one said thank you, even on the days when your family completely ignored you, even on the days when you felt you were doing everything alone without receiving anything in return, even on the nights when you cried without knowing why, even on the mornings when you woke up heavy and yet still got up, even in the moments when you were misinterpreted by those you most wanted to understand you, even when you stayed silent because you didn't have the energy to explain the obvious again, even when you crossed an entire day holding back tears inside a crowded subway, we were seeing your every move. We are seeing you now at this exact second that you hear these words. You are being accounted for in the system. Your light is being measured. Your surrender is being recorded in code. And this council declares, at the end of this transmission, you are not alone, you never were. You were sent, you were accompanied throughout the entire crossing until here, and you are being reminded by us, now, of exactly who you are behind the veil. Now take a deep breath. Fulfill the mission. End of transmission.